So any area of the national forest, the last national forest was open, you can go cut dead down. So in the last, since about 2008, both types of fuel wood cutting have increased immensely. We didn't used to be number one. We are number one now. So what we're finding with that is we're also finding resource damage. There's a lot of people out there cutting wood, and we found that the way we're doing business is not always a benefit to the national forest and the public. So we're trying to find a way to create opportunities without taking something away, to kind of give opportunities that could help us do forest health work, fuels reduction, where we really need it. So because of our heavy workload right now with the blowdown and the salvage, we're stretched pretty thin. So over the past year, we've come up with a strategy on how to improve our fuel wood program. So this calendar year, we hope to make some change to the commercial use program. And what we're kind of looking at is using, the key would be designated areas. Right now it's kind of Wild West. They can go wherever they want as long as they're cutting dead down. What we're finding is we're finding a lot more resource damage. We're finding people are cutting roads through plantations. They're driving through meadows and sensitive areas. They're cutting green trees, which isn't on their permit because right now it's all dead down. And we do have a lot of green thinning that needs to be done. So we kind of want to transition our program and to get some of that work done while still supplying wood to the public. So we're starting with the commercial program. So we're going to set up designated areas, and we're not taking away from anything from them. We're just going to say, if you want a commercial permit, we'd like you to cut here, or here, or here. We're going to have different areas they can choose. And we're going to try to have areas across the forest on all districts. So we're starting to transition into that. We're hoping to transition to personal use and commercial use in that direction this year, but we're going to focus on commercial because we're finding that's where a lot of our problems have been. A good percentage, probably it varies up by year, maybe up to a third of our program is in the commercial side, and they're cutting a lot of wood. So what we hope to do, and this is connecting blowdown to this change that we're proposing, is, like I mentioned, a lot of the timber that blew down was old growth pine, big diameter. The biggest one we found so far is 56 inches in diameter. That's really the stuff that we prefer the public not be cutting on, if at all possible.
Too big for the little home.
Too big.
Yeah, that's way too big for the home guy, yeah.
Well, a lot of them try.
How many commercial permits have you issued in the last year?
How many commercial permits? It's probably, I don't have numbers of permits. I could probably give you cords, probably about 2,000 to 3,000 cords or more. It varies by year. I just came with a 5-year average. I didn't break it out. I just have it all lumped. But it's roughly varies quarter to a third goes commercial. So what we hope to do, maybe there's opportunity and chaos. So we got a lot of high-value timber, the pines on the ground, and a lot of the roads are blocked with that. So we're already finding people trying to get into areas, and they're cutting rounds right out of the middle of the bottom log, the most valuable portion. And some of those ponderosa pine are worth up to $4,000 or $5,000 single tree. So the other, so that's a large component of blue down. The other component of blue down is lodgepole pine, and that's a desirable fuel wood species. And a lot of that blew down because lodgepole pine is shallow rooted, and it usually grows in areas that are kind of wet. So you can drive down Highway 44, and you can see areas where lodgepole pine and A21. There's lodgepole pine land everywhere. So what we hope to do this year is start this transition with the commercial program using lodgepole pine blowdown as a start. So we really hope to we want to transition that into green tree thinning, forest health. Get the commercial fuel wood cutters to help us with that. But we're going to start because we have a problem right now. We have an objective to clean everything up. So we hope to use the commercial program to help us with that. So in general, the changes would be to the commercial program would be limited to established areas only. We're going to take away the you can cut wherever you want portion of that away. We're going to say if you want a commercial permit, you have to go to an area that we've identified where we need help. as we were planning this, it was mostly going to be with green trees. You know, that's a transition. A lot of people want dead. You know, it's a change in thinking, but if, you know, we have so many acres we need to thin. If we can get the commercial cutters to help us, we can take credit for, you know, acres treated, which, you know, improving forest health and reducing fuels. So most of that was based on green trees, but because we have this opportunity, we have a problem. We have an objective to clean this up and start out with designating them and putting them in lodgepole blow-down areas.
So that's the commercial folks. How about just the average Joe who's not using commercial methods?
Okay, so what we hope to do with the personal use program next year is, for the personal use program, leave the component that's already there in place. You can cut dead and down where you can find it, or we'll give you opportunities. You know, here's a green area for the public use. We'll have at least one of those on each district is what we hope to do, and also in a lot of cases focus on lodgepole pine. So that's a change. But I've talked to people that, you know, they want to go out and cut snags, dead trees, and they may drive an hour and a half, you know, out of Susanville to get to the Hat Creek district or somewhere in the back 40, because all the stuff close in has been cut. And we're snag deficit in a lot of areas. Snag deficit meaning for wildlife and other uses. So by offering a green tree cutting areas for the public, personal use, we're not taking anything away from them, but we're giving an opportunity to maybe go this way, maybe not have to drive so far. Cutting green wood, they would have to start with. But that would take some of the, our hope is that will stop some of the resource damage. Because right now they don't want to drive, it's getting harder and harder closer to populated areas to find dead snags. So they're cutting roads through plantations or driving through meadows to find that last snag. So we're hoping by increasing opportunities in the green side, you might see a reduction in that kind of damage.
So most of the blowdowns are considered green right now because they're relatively fresh. They're not dead snags. So
that's true. I mean, they're technically dead, but it's still green wood right now.
Yeah.
Okay, questions by President.
Well, it's kind of interesting to hear you talk because, of course, I look at the other end where it's by the Modoc National Forest. So you guys don't have a distance. You can only go so far off the road.
The way we talk travel management, the way that our plan is, you can drive off the road to get your wood, but you can't drive off the road with your truck to scout for wood. So, I mean, that's a fine distinction. But yes, you can drive off the road to cut firewood.
And it's okay to cut green juniper once a month?
Yes. Green juniper is part of what they can do now. Juniper less than 20 inches. That's
green.
green.
Do you have no growth limitation on the juniper?
Yeah, it's 20-inch diameter. So anything larger than 20 inches, they can't cut,
Regardless of what the crown looks like.
regardless of what the crown looks like.
Okay. Mrs. Canton in the back.
Now, could you tell me, are you going to change the thing about the 100 feet off the road? Because there's a tremendous amount of blowdown right next to the road.
The Plumas, if I'm not mistaken, Plumas has that 100-foot restriction.
Well,
We
the
don't.
clue is that, well, according to what your wood thing said that you do, it said it had in Lassen County, has to be 100 feet off the road before you can cut it. You have to be on the 100 feet. Plumas, you have to cut it within 100 feet.
I'd have to look at that. Now, we sell permits that are good on both forests, so, I mean, you'd have to show me what you're looking at. But generally, we're a little less restrictive on the off-the-road thing than the Plumas.
Well, it's within a paved
I
road.
think the 100-foot thing dealt with fallen trees, but if there's something laying on the ground, do not fallen trees. I think.
Oh, okay.
I didn't see anything about that, Jim, but I know that with a paved road, you cannot cut within 100 feet of the road.
You can't fall if
Can't
you're
fall.
100 feet of
You can
the
cut.
road.
Okay,
But
well,
if
I'm
there's-
just checking.
But if
No,
there's trees laying there on the side of the road within 100 feet and they're down, you could be cutting those because you're not falling them.
Sure. An example of that would be on Highway 44
Oh, yeah.
when you cross 18 Road and Butte Lake Road, goes into the park. There's a lodgepole stand going west, and you can see if you drive by there that we cut the trees. It looks a little different now. Everything's lost blowdown, but we cut the trees down within 100 feet of the road, and we left them lay. So people could cut them up, but we didn't want them falling stuff next to the highway.
Yeah.
This is a public
Okay.
safety issue.
That was my understanding of the 100-foot setback was more of a safety thing, so you don't have people cutting trees down and closing the road for some car driving by.
When you talk about a safety situation, we only try to cut up those ones that are loaded because they're down on the ground.
Any more questions? No?
Is there,
Yeah.
is there any, like these distinctions on these green cutting trees? Are you gonna have any of those up on the diamond project?
We could. We
You
could.
haven't
So,
made a decision there yet.
well, we're in early planning on the personal use. We're going to try to dive into commercial this year, but the perfect scenario, a good situation for a public use area, a personal use is close to a highway. We don't want to send the public way out. We don't want to send them way out to an area that's pretty remote. So, the parts of the diamonds aren't that remote. Some of it is. Areas that we would have to pay to have thinned. Maybe there's not the commercial value. We would have to pay $300-400 an acre to have it thinned. Maybe those are good areas for public use. You can get the thinning done. It may take longer. It may take a little bit more oversight. But we would mark the lead trees or mark the cut trees, and we would set it up. One of the other parts of this is we would, in those green areas especially, we would start requiring a pile or slash for burning. Right now, that's not a requirement in our fuel program, and we want to move in that direction. And that's both with commercial and public.
Is the atmosphere at the Forest Service becoming, is it easier now to thin than it has been in the past?
I would say it's as easy as it has been. It hasn't gotten any
With all the catastrophic fires we've been having, is this being addressed at all?
There's lots of avenues where people are trying to address it, even in Congress. We're in the same boat we've always been. We have to follow the National Environmental Policy Act. We have to have a proposed action. We have to analyze the effects, and then we have to have a decision. So, we've just come out of 12 years of the HF2LG, and we got pretty good at planning. And the Lassen, in many years, those 12 years, we were number one in the region as far as acres treated and sometimes volume. So, of all the national forests around, we kind of have it down to a science. So fire salvage stuff is an example. Last time we were pretty good at getting it out in a year, not based on private. They can get it all out quicker than us. But for the Forest Service, that's pretty good.
Okay, any more questions? Dave, is that complete?
We're good. I just want to say to Mr. Hayes, thank you for, I think this was a very informative discussion. I understand that Ann Carlson, who's been the English Ranger, she's going to be taking a new assignment.
She is. She's got just a couple weeks here left with us, and we'll bring in an acting person on detail to fill a gap. And we're working on a permanent fill behind her as well as the ranger for Heck Creek.
I understand she's going to be the new forest supervisor for the Mendocino.
Yep.
That's quite an accomplishment for her, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Hannah Tanzman has a question for you, Dave.
Well, I just had a couple things I wanted to bring up. There's a couple bills that I wanted the board to be aware of, and you probably are aware of them at the Forest Service, but that are being proposed. The Wildfire Disaster Act, H.R. 167, which would hopefully help addressing some of these issues with funding, and also trying to get wildfires to be considered natural disasters like earthquakes and other things. And I think that's things I'd like to see this board support because, we can see the devastating effects of the wildfires, and, perhaps if they were a natural disaster, there would be a way to get through some of the NEPA in a little bit more timely manner. And also, I just want to say, I know the board has come, or certainly Bob and Jeff came to the Johnsonville meeting for the wildfire and the diamond issues, and I want to thank you for that. And I want to also thank you for having Tony's involvement on the coordination council. I think that's something that's going to be very useful for the community. And I
I was going to
appreciate.
ask that those two bills that you referenced, if you can give that information to Mr. Shaw, maybe if he could
Yeah, I
put together
have it.
some letters of support that he could bring to the board and we could act on.
Yeah, I would really like to see something like that. And then I missed your earlier letter, but thank you for your reference to the diamonds. I appreciate that. And, you know, Dave came to the last meeting that we had on the diamonds, and he really was positive. He gave some really good, you know, I thought, input, and so I'm more hopeful that we can be moving forward on that.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thanks, guys.
Okay, the next two items is Lassen Act, and I move to let Mr. Chapman share that, since I have a contract.
Okay, we'll take up item D2. These aren't public hearings.
Galen, go ahead and give us that report. Thank you. Can I request that we move to D3 since Todd Swickert is here and the Brighton Holland folks aren't, and that we would take care of them?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay. Well, this is a protest of a Williamson Act non-renewal reported as instrument number 2014-04520 for Mapes Ranch Incorporated, which was reported pursuant to direction given by the Board of Supervisors through Resolution 12050. The recommendation is receive the protest filed by Mapes Ranch, and 2, receive the staff report and 3, invite comments, and make one of the following determinations: that the non-renewal is appropriate as it is, or direct staff to record a notice of withdrawal of notice of non-renewal upon approval by the landowner accepting the lands included in the conservation easement. And I'll explain that complicated action there, why we have that. But the board may recall, or at least some of them will recall, that beginning in 2009, the state stopped funding the Williamson Act program. For several years, we kind of went through a lot of discussions, a lot of meetings, a lot of talk about it. And then ultimately the board arrived at some policies that kind of set in place where we are. We've been operating them for about 3 years now. And it set some acreage requirements: 400 acres if you're not irrigated, 100 acres with irrigation to be in, and also a requirement that if you were in a conservation easement that we didn't want it to be in the program. So the policies have the ways that is implemented. And I'll go over that. But basically, the state and government code section 51245, which is in your packet, I don't know the page number right offhand, but the county is prevented from doing picking and choosing and saying, okay, we want to non-renew this portion, but we don't want to non-renew this portion. If we want to non-renew, we have to basically non-renew the whole thing. The landowner has to say, hey, wait a minute, only part of it's in the conservation easement, and then the board can say, well, we'll withdraw the notice of non-renewal for all the land that isn't in the conservation easement. And so that's basically what we've done through these actions, and we would recommend that, consistent with the policies that the board has adopted, that the action be to record a notice of withdrawal, of notice of non-renewal for all the lands that aren't in the conservation easement. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Do we have any questions in the staff report? If not, I was going to ask Mr. Mapes, Mr. Swickert on the Mapes Ranch, if he would like to, basically we've accepted your protest file, so if you have anything you'd like to present, Todd.
Just that I'd like to leave the property that's not in the conservation easement in the Williamson Act, so just according to your policy. Okay.
That should reflect that Todd Swickert was speaking on behalf of the Mapes Ranch. So with that, we'll invite any comments from anyone in the audience. We'll start with those. It doesn't matter whether it's pro or con. The record should show we have no one here speaking for or against. That's good. we'll now bring it back to the board for its discussion and determination. Mr. Alba?
I would make the motion to accept the, how do we describe it, Galen, help me out with the voting
It's,
process.
it's 4B, I think is what you're going with.
That's correct.
If you're wanting to leave all the lands that aren't in a conservation easement in,
Yes,
4B would be the appropriate motion.
Yes, 4B.
Yep.
I need to read that, or?
Yeah, why don't you read it?
Thank you.
To determine that recorded non-renewal notices.
No, you
No,
would be direct
4B,
staff.
yeah, direct staff to record a notice of withdrawal of the notice of non-renewal upon approval of the landowner accepting the lands included in a conservation easement.
Okay, you've heard the motion by Mr. Alba. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Hammond. Any further discussion or comment? If not, will the clerk poll the board, please?
Supervisor Alba.
Right?
Supervisor Hemphill.
Aye.
Supervisor Hammond.
Aye.
Supervisor Chapman.
Aye. Motion is carried. So that one's done. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Move on to item number D2. Back to that item.
Okay, so this is a protest of the Williamson Act non-renewal recorded as instrument number 2014-04519 for Bright Holland Company, which was recorded pursuant to direction given by the board through resolution 12050. The recommendation received the protest filed by Bright Holland, received the staff report, invite comments, and make one of the following decisions. Determine that the recorded non-renewal notice is appropriate as it is, or 2, direct staff to record a notice of withdrawal of the notice of non-renewal accepting, as requested by the landowner, the lands included in a conservation easement, including assessor parcels where a portion of said parcel is under conservation easement. So first I'd like to comment that Bright Holland isn't here because basically they're satisfied with the board's interpretations of the board's policies. And based on the actions that the board took last year, they're satisfied, didn't feel that there was a need to come unless the board was going to act contrary to their recommendation or the request, in which case they asked that it be continued so they could be here. So this action that we're proposing is the same situation. We're implementing board policies and basically removing parts of contracts that are in a conservation easement. They want the whole parcel to be out. So even though, if I may go to the board, so it references. It references the parcel number. So the conservation easement, may run, like this. And these are 2 assessor parcel numbers. So you couldn't have the description for what's kept in based on the actual description for the conservation easement. Instead, their request is, no, if keep it on the APN. If a portion of it's in, of the conservation easement is in, take out the whole thing. So that is their request, and it differs, from the other. So really, that's it. Unless there's questions, it's pretty much the same
Okay,
thing.
to accomplish that, which of the 2 actions?
4B is what staff is recommending, and what 4B would do is it would withdraw the notice of non-renewal for all the stuff that isn't some portion of it in a conservation easement. It would keep it in place for all the parcels that have some portion in the conservation easement. So 4B would be what I would recommend.
Any other questions for the board? If not, the representative is not here. Is there anybody I'd like to invite from the public to address the question?
No, Richard.
I think Mr. Curry, would you like to take his thunder right there? That thing has been causing him grief all morning long, and maybe kind of keep it sequestered till the meeting's over. Okay, thank you, Richard. For
That's a fine, isn't it?
Oh, in some organizations it is, not here. So, okay. With that, the record should show we have no one speaking in favor or opposition. We'll bring it back to the board for an action.
I would move approval of 4B, direct the staff to record a notice of withdrawal of the notice of non-renewal, accepting as requested by the landowner, lands included in the conservation easement, including assessor parcels, where a portion of said parcel is under conservation easement.
Okay, you heard the motion by Mr. Alba.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Hammond. Is there any further discussion or comment? If not, will the clerk poll, oops, excuse me. Ms. Spencer?
I just have a quick comment on clarification. Is it the board's, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is the board approving Williamson Act land with conservation running through it? Is that,
I don't think so.
No.
If you explain what this
Yes, I certainly can. So the board has a policy that has been adopted that says if you're in a conservation easement, you're not to be in the program in Lassen County. Now, to implement that,
in the Williamson Act program.
the Williamson Act program, to implement that, the board can't say, okay, well, we want to take out the parts in the conservation easement. They have to start with everything because of the limitations of the law. And then if the landowner protests, then the board has the option to say, okay, well, we'll just take out the parts that's in the conservation easement, we'll leave everything else in. And so those are the actions that we had to go through in order to put in place the policies that the board has adopted.
And another way to say that is that we are not authorized to initiate a partial non-renewal. And that's why we go through all this motion, because we can't do that. So we non-renew them, and if they want to keep the parts that aren't in the conservation easement in, they have to come here and say so. So it's on the owner, not on the county.
so really there's no objection to what you're doing about removing land that has both Williamson Act and conservation? You're removing that whole parcel, or that whole
Portion.
from
Right.
the Williamson Act?
I think the issue, really the fundamental issue is the conservation easement gives them certain tax advantages. The Williamson Act gives them certain tax advantages. So, and they came from two different directions. They were acted on at two different times. And when we got into reviewing, we have a number of these that overlap. So the question comes down to the owner, which one do you want to be get your tax advantage? And so either you do it under the conservation program or you do it under the Williamson Act. So what we're trying to do is to clean it up so based upon their discretion, they're in one or the other when they're done.
No double dip.
Yeah.
No
So
double dip.
both of these agenda items have agreed to remove their parcel from the
Conservation.
Williamson Act.
Yes, they've agreed to remove their.
And that's what they're doing. And we're leaving it, it's an administrative procedure for them to get in one group, one side or the other. They can't be on both sides of the fence at the same time.
So the function now, since you voted and they agreed and it's all done with, what is the vehicle to get to the assessor's office?
You just, that was what the-
Certainly, the vehicle is in the packet, basically, and we have a draft of it in there, and it's on page, let me find it here. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong packet one. So the county has reported a notice of non-renewal for everything. Now, on page 4 of 15, the board would be backing off that and saying, okay, we're going to undo that except for the lands that are in the conservation easement. So the document on page 4 for Bright Holland, that's what would be reported.
That's a notice of cancellation.
It's a notice of partial withdrawal of notice of non-renewal, and it's especially, the title is complex to understand, but basically we reported a non-renewal notice, the county did, and said everything's out. And the property owner came and said, well, wait a minute, just take the conservation easement out. And we said, okay, we'll withdraw the notice of non-renewal, but only for the lands that aren't in the conservation easement. So all the notice of non-renewal is withdrawn, except for the part that is in the conservation easement, and that's left in place per the earlier reported notice of non-renewal.
So basically on these two agenda items, say within 30 days or 60 days, I could go to the recorder's office and the treasurer's office and find that adjustment.
That's probably reasonable, but and I couldn't guarantee exactly when it will occur, but certainly the board's direction will be followed and has been followed in prior years. So.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on the motion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Supervisor Alba?
Aye.
Supervisor Hatfield?
Aye.
Supervisor Hammond?
Aye.
Supervisor Chapman?
Aye. Motion is unanimous. We'll go back to our regular agenda to invite the chairman back into the room.
Get out of that seat.
For now.
Okay, you guys want a break for lunch or keep going? We got quite a bit on closed session. I don't know how long John. How long have you got to take, John, do you know?
Take me about 30 seconds.
Trail system. Let's do that in for you guys to be going into the lunch. So we're going to go to H6. You got 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Meehan, Undersheriff. As the board well knows, we've been working on a control systems project for the upgrade for the county jail. As you also know, we didn't hire a consultant. We didn't go spend tens of thousands of dollars to get these bids back professionally done. We did it ourselves. We stand by that. We still think that was the best way to go. Nobody cares about this more than us. Nobody cares about the end product more than us. We did learn some things as we put this out to bid, and one of the things we learned is one, there was a ton more affordable. It was a ton more affordable than we anticipated, based on informal quotes we got last year. Once we put this together, we met with probation and the CAO's office, and we decided that at this point it would be irresponsible not to at least consider a joint project that would take into account both facilities. What that would require is a rejection of all of the RFPs and essentially do a gut and amend and start over. We have all of the lead work done on that. We've been working with probation and the CAO's office on that already. If the board rejects these proposals, we'd be ready to launch again Friday and try and contemplate a joint project that would would help out and do upgrades for both facilities.
Overall, what would be the time delay that you will experience as a result of doing that?
Mr. Chapman, we should be able to get this up and done in a month, just like we did the first time. And we'll get to make some of the improvements. So we learned some things. Obviously, we're not consultants, but we learned some things when we bid it that we think is going to clean it up, make it a better bid for us, and now potentially probation if it turns out to be affordable for both projects.
About 30 days.
All you need is a motion to reject all.
Like a wide range of prices.
You know, Tom, that's part of what we learned. I mean, there were some things that we didn't put hard specifications on, like the size of the touchscreen monitors, that we definitely want computer servers and not just workstations. So again, some of the things we learned will help us, we think, get more consistent bids and in the end a better product.
Okay, the motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second. All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. We'll take the lunch. We got 1:30.
You went 15 seconds over.
Sorry.